So since the Bruins trade, not quite fire sale, but something approaching it, they are entering Wednesday. I think they've lost six straight, 9 of 11 of their last 11. I believe they are 6 points out of a wild card spot, but the teams they are chasing um, look like they have 2 games in hand. If I am reading the standings correctly, um, mathematics aside, I mean, it seems like it's over, and the last few losses have not particularly looked like a team that is fully committed. Initially, I know we were a little bit high on what they might look like moving forward. Maybe that Brad Marchand was a problem in the room for some of these players. It looks like it is anything but that. So, what have you guys seen, or mercifully, if you're like me and you don't stay up for these 10 o'clock games in San Jose, not seen from the Bruins in the last couple weeks?
I mean, they can't score, they can't defend. They're when they do defend, their goalie gives up good opportunities. Like this is just a fully broken team, which further reiterates the need that they need just a complete front office reshaping. Because I mean, there's not a whole lot of help coming. This team's going to have to build through free agency. And then over the course of many years, the draft. They waited far too long to blow this thing up, and now they're pretty much devoid of talent. So I do stand by, I know that when we talked about this last time, I was a little bit more bullish on the Bruins because at that point they had just smacked the Lightning after the deadline, and then that thrilling win over the Panthers.
You prisoner of the moment takes? No way.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Because what I was about to do is stand by the fact that I do think they needed more skill. I don't necessarily disagree with the premise of changing how they're operating in that way, but you have an interim coach. Everyone's checked out. You know you're not making the playoffs. Like this team's definitely packing it in. I think all they needed was one losing streak of maybe a couple games to knock them off course. Like they had to ride that Panthers win for a while, and they didn't. They showed who they are. So now you're in fact finding for the next week until the playoffs start. But yeah, I mean, I think they do need a stylistic shift, but that's not coming this year. They're just playing the string out.
In Logan's defense, and then Logan, I was aligned with you on this. The position was that if they played the way that they played against those two Florida teams the rest of the season, they were going to be at least intriguing to watch.
Yeah.
And intriguing to watch is much different than saying a team's going to be good. I think you kind of alluded to it, Logan. They rode the Panthers win. I think that's the sign of a team that does not have an identity. Where if something is going fairly well, like they can hang in there. They look like mentally, psychologically, they look like they're in it. But a team that doesn't really have an identity, like as soon as you have, maybe you don't get out to a good start, or the other team scores a couple early goals, you kind of just start to like, okay, well, we're gonna get a paycheck anyway, so you just kind of slow down, and and the next thing you know, you've given up 7 goals. Whereas a team that does have an identity, it's like, okay, you give up 2-3 first period goals, you're still in it, you can still come back. That this just strikes me as a team that they realize that there's not a whole lot left, either in the season or from a leadership standpoint in the dressing room, and it's like, let's just get to the end of this campaign. My concern is with the dressing room culture beyond this season, because this season is a lost cause, but like I they're stuck with Swayman, and I don't even know that Swayman is an NHL goalie anymore. I mean, we always used to complain that Tuukka Rask was good for at least one bad goal every game. This season, Swayman's good for 2 or 3, sometimes 4, just like atrocious goals where you're like, what was he doing? Where was he on that? So I feel like there has to be a reset with him. It's like somehow. And I don't think that's like you can just trickle to the end of the season and come back next year and expect it to be good. I feel like something has to be done. Either like you sit him down for the rest of this season, and you just kind of have him go home, or something of that nature. Because if not, it almost seems like he's like Chuck Knobloch, trying to throw to second base. You know what I mean? It's just like he's like forgotten how to do his job.
Yeah, I guess
Oh,
the one thing that make you like give you reason for optimism there is like this happens to goalies. Like, I mean, wasn't Tuukka?
Bennington.
Yeah, Bennington. I mean, like there are a ton of examples, and like even I mean, this might be I might have this wrong, but didn't like Tuukka Rask was good like his first year or something. I think when Tim Thomas was hurt, and then going in the next year, like Tuukka did not look good, and Tim Thomas got that job back and led him to the Stanley Cup. Like, you know, I'm just saying like this does happen. I think maybe the answer is like just to your point, Ben, if nothing else, like go into next year and give him like real competition. What's the kid's name in the goalie prospect? Is it Busey?
Yeah, Brendan Bussey.
Bussey. So like I
Gary
don't know
Busey.
how he's done this year. I'm not going to pretend to know, but like if they think he's got a shot, like like give Swayman some competition in camp so he doesn't feel like the job's just going to be handed to him. Um, on that thing the other night with him trying to fight the guy and then Zadorov's comments after the game, I'm probably giving too much credit to them on this, but I do buy his explanation that like he just didn't want to hear any sort of positive slanted question after a loss that bad. It's like players do hate that. And like I mean, I can't how many times like going in after just another awful Patriots loss, and then someone asks David Andrews, David, how good was it to see Demontre Jacobs go out there and hold his own today after being a healthy scratch 3 weeks in a row? And like to his credit, he'd always answer it professionally, but you could tell he's like, "What the hell are you asking me that for?" And
No.
so like I know it sounded bad, but I'm willing to buy into Zadorov's explanation that he was just annoyed at the question in general. But maybe I'm giving him too
So
much
the
credit.
Yeah,
explanation.
I
So
mean,
just to sorry, correct. So anyone who didn't hear, Swayman challenged the other goalie to a fight. The refs kind of got in the middle of it and wouldn't let it happen. And afterwards, um, Zadorov was asked, like, was it good to see your goalie stand up for his teammate? And Zadorov said, "Is that what happened?" So sorry. Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah,
yeah,
he
and
was
then
like,
said no comment.
is that what happened? I don't know, no comment.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I, yeah, I mean, as somebody who is signed to a long-term deal and was, thought to be part of the future of this generation of Bruins, you'd probably hope Zadorov answers that question a little better, even if he's pissed. To your point about David Andrews, Dakota, but yeah, I mean, I can't imagine any of them are thrilled with Swayman. So at the absolute
Right.
worst, it's just saying the quiet part out loud. Like I do subscribe to the theory that it was weird timing for Swayman, and it certainly doesn't help when you try and do that and then you go into the break and on the other side proceed to get your doors kicked in. Like if you're gonna do that, you better not give up 4 goals in the third period or whatever it was. Um, and to the point about is Swayman even an NHL goalie? One thing that I think is kind of worth contrasting is I remember when Linus Olmark was still with the Sabres when he went to arbitration with them one year and they were like 4 million apart in their number, which you never see figures that far apart in NHL arbitration. The Sabres wanted to give him like I think it was like 1.5 and he wanted 5 or something. Um, and a lot of people were like, how can there be such a chasm in what these guys are asking? And the point was that even though Linus Olmark's save percentage numbers, goals against numbers were a little bit inflated, he was facing a goddamn firing squad every night. And it was telling that when Linus Olmark came over to the Bruins, he was immediately a Vezina caliber goalie because all the underlines were there because he proved even on a bad team, he will be worthwhile. He'll still be bad, but he will stop it from getting worse. I think it's very telling that in a bad year for the Bruins, Swayman has only made things worse. He has not prevented things from getting any worse. He has contributed to things falling. And I think that's where you can kind of separate the franchise goalie versus was he just benefiting from only having to play 41 games a year?
Yeah, I also think like still a young player, right? And I think young guys are especially susceptible to like, everyone says rising tide raises all ships. Well, it goes the other way too. And when it's all going bad, I think it just kind of goes bad for everyone. So like I'm by no means giving up on the guy. And like I know I just brought up another poll, but for whatever reason I do put a lot of stock in these polls that come out when that poll executives and scouts and coaches. And the Athletic had one in like mid-January that was like it was polling all the main people in the NHL on goalie tiers. And there was tier one, which is like Vesna candidates, and there were like four guys. And then tier two was high end starters, and Swayman was like the third guy mentioned. So like, hey, I don't know. I mean, maybe that opinion's changed a lot since then because it has been that bad the last 2 months. But you know, a lot of people really think highly of him. It's just, you know, I don't know. That maybe he seems like it might be a weird dude. Like I don't know. But goalies are also weird, so I don't know if that's a knock against him. So I don't. I'm with you. Like I could go either way on this. I could sign up for like sending him a harsh lesson, or I could sign up for just chalking it up to a bad year. But the other big thing that I'm curious about with the Bruins going forward, and I'll be curious for your take, John, is what happens at head coach. Like I think it's easy to assume that doesn't get brought back as the full time head coach. Um, but what do you think? Do you think he deserves another shot, or is it just like it's the writing on the wall?
Um, I think at this point you probably just go with a clean break. I mean, he took over. There's the period of time where he coached them. What was that, 2023 when Cassidy got COVID? Not 2023. This would have been 2021 maybe. And then he's gotten this opportunity now, and it's like, he was fine as a stopgap when he had a much better team at his disposal. I just You're probably getting a temporary coach right now. Like, this team needs a rebuild. I can't imagine that this job is going to be all that attractive. If they think Joe Sacco is going to be like the guy that they need to help develop and bring along younger players, then that, like, maybe he fits that role, but you should at least go and look at what else is out there. Because they're definitely not going to make a premier hire. I mean, if the Rangers can't Peter Laviolette, I don't think he's going to be coming to the Bruins or anything like that. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we sooner saw like a Jay Leach type end up becoming, he coached in Providence forever. He was on the Kraken staff for a while when they first expanded into the league. So I can sooner see someone more with that type of makeup instead of someone who's a bit more of a like NHL assistant, someone with a little more recent AHL experience. But I don't know. It's gonna have to probably be a younger guy who's gonna be there to help rebuild.
Yeah, part of me is fearful of them doing like another overcorrection on the coaching front, and like this wouldn't happen, but like if Tortorella somehow shook free again, like if they would
He
overcorrect and go
probably
something
will.
like that. Yeah, he might.
I
You
mean,
know,
he's talking himself out of Philly right now because
is
they
that what they
stink as
need here?
well. That I don't think that would work here, especially not at this juncture. I'm just concerned that the Bruins are going to tell themselves a story that, okay, we get McAvoy back, we get Lindholm back, we're going to be way better next year, and they just try and run it back. And like that might be the type of thing that leads to a Joe Sacco rehiring. But like this team needs to stop putting off the inevitable. Like Pasternak, Swayman for better or for worse, and McAvoy are on under contract long enough that they will be here for the other side of rebuilds. Like you need to stop putting this off.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to circle back to my comment about Swayman, whether or not he's an NHL goalie, I guess what I'm getting at is if nothing changes, I think he's tracking towards potentially not being an NHL goalie. But if something does change, whether that's here, maybe it's a change of scenery. We've seen that you guys want to mention a lot of this has happened before to other goalies. Like a lot of times, what solved it for those goalies was going to a different club. So, yeah, I think that I think that that's kind of team wide. That if everything is doing is going tracking the same direction, for the club in general, I don't know if you can fix this without institutional changes.